Look, we started this afternoon's session hearing about what I would call reforming zeal of the Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government. And those of us who were at the dinner last night heard from the Secretaries of State in Education and Business Innovation and Skills. And Nick Boles works to both of those Secretaries of State as the Minister of State for Skills. I think he also has to take on the mantle of that reform, indeed revolution, to use Greg Clark's phrase, and he does so in this area of skills and productivity that we've been talking about this afternoon. In fact, I think he's picking up what was started some 20-odd years ago by the last Tory majority government, when they took local education authorities out of local authority, further education colleges out of local authority control. And there was an intervention to change a part of the supply side. Now what Nick has is a task that I see as akin to sitting on a chair with four very, very clear legs. Two of those legs are to do with the reform of further education, the skills devolution, the devolution of the funding for skills, and as we heard earlier on, the area-based reviews that will stabilise and simplify the further education system. So the supply side in FE. Also on that side is a reform and a championing of apprenticeships and routes through to work, with the engagement of a careers and enterprise company that hopefully will help us all get better information, advice and guidance. It's a massive agenda. It's a big chair you're sitting on, but it isn't just about reform of supply side, because critically it engages the demand side, the employers that we in our businesses, and the engagement of businesses in local enterprise partnerships that mean that I think there's a chance really that if we work together, we will be able to work to make significant progress on skills and productivity over the next 4.5 years. So Nick, you won't be surprised to know that skills and productivity have featured this afternoon. We're grateful for you giving up your time. I know you've got a short speech to give to us, and I think if you will take questions after that, that would be immensely helpful. Nick Boles. I hope that's all right.
Thank you very much, Anne. I think in crude terms, you could characterise the work of the last Parliament as the work of getting the economy to create jobs. And I think that we all feel that we succeeded beyond our wildest dreams, and it was not us, it was businesses. We, to some extent, I think if we're honest, don't know quite why it is that they created so many jobs so quickly coming out of that recession, but it was tremendously welcome. But it therefore has cast into the spotlight the fact that what we have not seen is an equivalent increase in productivity. And if we were making a choice, I'm sure that we probably all of us would have chosen to have employment growth rather than productivity growth with large levels of unemployment, which is what some of our continental neighbours have. But of course now what we'd really like is both. We'd like the employment growth to continue, but now productivity growth to pick up. And we observe that for a very long period of time, this country has not been very strong on productivity growth. Both our sort of absolute starting level relative to that of our competitors, but also rates of productivity growth, particularly coming out of this cycle. And you will have heard some of the rather gloomy projections being made by the Office of Budget Responsibility in advance of the budget last week, specifically on this issue of productivity growth. And what that led us into is a debate about, okay, what is best done by whom in this area? And it's the classic question. We believe in devolving power, but the question is who to? And local government and local enterprise partnerships are one place to whom power can be devolved. But individuals are another, institutions are another, and then obviously employers and businesses in particular among those employers are another. And within the reforms, we have a blend of these different kinds of devolution. So we are very clearly putting our eggs in the basket of employer control of the apprenticeship programme. And the new apprenticeship levy, any company that pays the levy will receive money in a digital account to spend on apprenticeship training on standards that will have been developed by groups of employers and approved by an institute for apprenticeships that is itself controlled by a board of employers. So it is employers to whom we are devolving most of the control over apprenticeships. Within broader further education, we decided that the logical place to have perhaps some difference of approach is in the transition out of compulsory full-time education, the participation age having gone up to 18, into adult skills. And so we are proposing to move very, very fast. Indeed, I keep on saying to Greg Clark, as fast as he is willing to let us go on devolving control of both revenue budgets following on from the capital budgets that have been devolved to local areas for adult skills, while 16 to 19 skills funding will continue to be done as it is done in the rest of the school system on a per capita basis to the institution. And that means that further education colleges in all of our communities will have, as it were, a number of different constituencies that they should be responding to. Obviously, first and foremost, they should be responding to the needs of their students. They should be responding to the needs of local employers, and we hope that it is local employers through the local enterprise partnerships that will have the influence on what they do with their adult skills funding. And then they should be looking also to local government and understanding what local government believes is needed, in particular in what in the jargon is known as second chance education, the education for people who the school system has failed and who need to come to college as adults to get the remedial education to fill the gaps. So that is the sort of broad strategy. These strategies are always easier to put on a chart than they are to deliver, but I have to say that we're quite encouraged by the early news back from area reviews, the first two waves of area reviews that local enterprise partnerships, I hope, are very intimately involved in. Certainly they are in those two, has been very positive. We've enabled a bunch of independent institutions to arrive at some recommendations for future arrangements that they've all signed up to without too much arm twisting by the funding agencies. And we're hoping to see that replicated across the country so that we have a system of skills provision that is strong, that is sustainable, and that can serve local communities. That's enough from me. Now, questions. If I could see you, it would help, but...
I'll assist with that, Nick. If you stay there,
I'll stay
which is
here.
how we did it with Greg, I'll take them in threes,
Perfect.
if that's all right, and then you've got a chance to write them
that
down.
makes it
and
easier.
a mic comes, which is helpful. So hands up, folks, and then we can get the mic to you. Okay, there's one here. I'll take a second one. No takers? Yes, there is. Great, down here at the front. And then there's one over, one over there. Yeah, Philip, actually. And then one down here. Super. So say who you are and...
Roman Cooper from G1st LEP. Minister, LEPs are playing an increasingly influential role in helping businesses to tackle their skills gaps. In terms of apprenticeships, where do you see the critical areas that LEP should focus on and maximise our energies on?
Should we take the other two questions, Nick, if that's right? So, Philip?
Philip Cox, Cheshire and Warrington. Within Cheshire and Warrington, we've got sort of a heavily science and technology-based economy, but what we're finding is that the per capita approach to funding certainly adult skills, but potentially you said it was going to continue for 16 to 19-year-olds, is actually encouraging young people to sort of take courses that are not in science and technology. And I wondered what we could do with the system to try and get greater take-up of science and technology courses.
Okay, and finally down at the front here.
Thank you, Brian Johnson from the Solent LEP. I'm at heart a free marketeer and believe in competition, but we deal with a lot of post-16 education establishments in our area, and one of the things that concerns me is the way they're funded, is the amount of time that senior staff in those colleges spend trying to recruit students off each other rather than raising educational attainment. And I wonder if you think we've perhaps gone a bit too far in encouraging competition when what you're competing for is youngsters.
Great. Well, thank you. There are three really useful questions. Firstly, on apprenticeships. Obviously, as I've explained it, employers are going to be in the driving seat of both apprenticeship funding and apprenticeship standards development. And we don't want to move to a position where we are having a sort of local fragmentation of, say, apprenticeship standards, because many employers will have employees all across the country and want to know that they can put people on apprenticeships. So we haven't felt it was right to localise in that area of it. The one area which I do think is a really great potential for LEPs to get involved is particularly in facilitating apprenticeships for small and medium-sized businesses. And a number of different areas have taken different approaches. There's a model that's existed for a while of what are miscalled, in my view, apprenticeship training agencies, because they don't actually do the training, but they're agencies, which basically employ the apprentice, because an apprentice has to be employed for at least 12 months, and then places them with maybe more than one employer, so that if you are a sole trader or you have a very small business and you don't have the security of business to feel willing to take the risk of employing an apprentice yourself, then an apprenticeship training agency can take that on, manage all of the communication with the funding agency, and then place the apprentice in more than one employer. And some LEPs I know have looked into creating their own apprenticeship training agencies. That's certainly one model that might work. Some other combined authorities have set up apprenticeship hubs, which are a bit different, but are similar. So I think that if I was going to urge this audience to focus on one thing, it would be, how do we extend the opportunity of apprenticeships to more businesses in our area and more smaller businesses in our area? Because currently in this country, we only have about 15% of businesses offering apprenticeships. And if we could even double that, we would have a dramatically better situation in terms of skills and productivity. On to the question from Warrington. I mean, I do entirely understand that if you have at least sub-19, a standard £4,000 a year, then it doesn't necessarily lead to people to make choices that reflect the real value of the qualifications they're doing. We do acknowledge that. We have, to some extent we acknowledge it, we have agreed to fund what's called large programs, so either programs involving 5 A-levels if it's the academic route, or larger programs, also land-based programs and the like. So we do fund those a little bit more highly. The one thing I'm looking at now is, which isn't quite what you were asking, but I hope it's on a similar point, which is that you do sometimes find that people will have got a qualification in, let's say, an academic subject, which they can't really use for gainful employment, and they want to be able to take an apprenticeship in a new, more technical field. And because of that prior qualification, they do not qualify for funding of their apprenticeship. And the one thing that we are looking into, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do something about, is enabling people who are proposing to take a STEM-related apprenticeship to be able to do so and receive that funding, even if they have a prior qualification at the same or higher level. Because I think that that would be an acknowledgement that we have a huge need for skills in that area, which we are currently not filling, and we shouldn't be excluding people from getting those skills that will benefit them and benefit the rest of society. On the funding competition point, I entirely agree with you. There's a constant and never fixed balance to be struck between wanting competition between different providers, but equally not wanting sort of zero-sum competition which doesn't add value. And I think it becomes particularly acute in the area of technical education, because to provide high quality technical education, you need to have levels of investment in kit, in equipment, in facilities, and in specialized staff that it is simply impossible for a very large number of institutions in any area to do. And so while we have an intensely competitive school system, and we want it to remain that, as we move into the technical area, we find that actually we want to have more specialization. That's not to say no competition, but to have a greater level of understanding that, okay, we're going to specialize in construction and engineering, and you're going to specialize in care and retail and business administration. We're not all going to try and do everything badly. And that is very much the guiding principle of the area reviews. Those institutions, in truth, like most modern industries, you compete on some stuff and you collaborate on other stuff, and just because you compete doesn't mean you can't collaborate, and vice versa. And if we could get that spirit going through area reviews, I think we might end up with a more intelligent system.
Other questions?
Any more?
One here from Joe. Number 2, over here. Thank you for putting your hand up so visibly, which is great. And a third?
Nope.
Yep. Okay, let's just run with those 2 then. First, Joe.
Thank you. Jo Lappin, Northamptonshire Enterprise Partnership. We have a very, very tight labour market, and one of the things that we really do face is serious skills challenges. Do you see, Minister, an opportunity for us to have a more flexible approach to funding, to retrain people? You've mentioned already STEM subjects. Can we think about how Local Growth Fund can support us to meet some of those urgent skill priorities?
Thank you.
And the second question?
Second question from me. I'm Jonathan Sharrock from the Coaster Capital LEP. I have a question about institutes of technology. A few months ago, there was a lot of talk about an institute of technology in every LEP area, the sense of a polytechnic gap that we had to fill with these institutions. I wonder if you could say a bit more about where that policy is and what we might expect out of the area reviews. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I agree with you that in areas where the labour market is tight, we need to make maximum use of the people we have, even if that requires a level of retraining. I think the main way that we would hope that that will be possible is through the apprenticeship programme. And it's one of the differences that I have with the opposition, and the opposition, I should say, are supporters of apprenticeships, but they tend to focus more on apprenticeships for young people, and also, which isn't quite the same thing, for people who are starting a job for the first time, for new recruits. And I genuinely believe that while they are important for young people and for new recruits, they are not only for young people or only for new recruits. So if you are 50, you should be able to do an apprenticeship, so long as you think you will benefit and your employer thinks you will benefit, and the investment an employer makes is much greater than just the training cost, as we all know. So the employer's only going to do it if they really think they're going to benefit. Then it shouldn't be for us to exclude it. So we do want our 3 million target to have a lot of people who are in their 30s and 40s and 50s who are being either retrained for an entirely new job or are going up a level within an organisation. And that therefore also means that even if you work for an organisation for 10 years at one level, if you feel and your employer feels that you will benefit from an apprenticeship that takes you to a higher level, then we shouldn't be standing in the way. In terms of using the local growth fund, I'm not sure, that's not really an area that I know a huge amount about to fund that. But I think what I would say is that when we move to a position where LEPs are involved in commissioning the adult skills education in their area, that they absolutely will be entitled. What we're hoping they will do is reach, this ghastly jargon, outcome agreements with colleges that will say this is what we need and this is what our community needs, and be quite directive, so long as it's not micromanaging. What I think the inherited situation is that we wildly micromanage every single little bit of funding that goes to them, but without actually having a broad strategy, because we're not close enough to the locality. You are close enough to the locality, and I hope that if you can stick to the sort of broad strategy and reach agreements that delivers that, that we will find the system works better for everyone. Institutes of technology is kind of classic government, isn't it? Is that we come out with a brand before we've entirely worked out what it means. So we now propose to work out what it means. And I think that what we want to acknowledge is that there may not be one model everywhere. We've got Lord Sainsbury leading a review of technical and professional education, and while his main focus is on the programs that people are doing between the ages of 16 and 19 in college on technical programs, he's also going to be looking at institutes of technology. So he will be recommending to us. But I think that what we're likely to end up doing is soliciting some proposals, relatively small number, so not in every LEP area initially, over the next couple of years, and then funding a few of them and seeing what works and which model, and there may well be more than one model that is successful. You know, to what extent does it involve a university or not? To what extent is it an entirely new institution as opposed to some part of an existing institution? That we'd like to actually explore it, but I think you put your finger on it, which is what we're trying to do, which seems to be the eternal story of education reform in this country, is recreate something that we once had in polytechnics, which is an institution that is proud to be specialised in high-quality technical education. Thank you very much.
Thank you. What both of the ministers had in common was saying, we want to hear from your ideas, we want you to lead, you are part of this revolution with us. We, I think, take that to heart. We thank you, Nick, for being direct, for being open, and for taking questions, and we'll work with you in taking this agenda forward. So thank you, Nick Boles, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you to the people who exhibited. Thank you to the people who put adverts in the programme and have taken part today as members of the wider extended LEP network. Huge thank you to all the speakers and my fellow sister chairs who've had to do this terrible thing of being on the stage and coordinating it and keeping it all together. Huge thanks to you all for coming. You don't have to fill in any evaluation forms now, but actually, of course, you can give feedback to us at any point. Warren and his team want to hear from you, the management board want to hear from you, so that we can make these kind of events things that work for you. And there will actually just be a very short survey monkey sent to you, not for filling in now, but as I say, for future filling in when you open your emails when you get home later on today. And then just finally, we've recorded, or some clever people have recorded what's been going on in pictorial and word form at the back. We will also be making that available to you. None of this could have happened if Warren, Jane and Mike had not worked to bring it to us. So we'll just end, if you don't mind, by giving a huge thanks to Warren, Jane and Mike.